All right, I'm going to go ahead and call our 2021 annual membership meeting to order. My name is Eddie Dominguez, and I have the honor of serving as the president of the Board of Trustees. Tonight's keeper of the flame is Carmen Navedo, who's sitting right over here holding the high watch for our meeting this evening. If you haven't already registered and received your ballot, please go ahead and do so at the tables by the entrance. Before we get going, we're going to start with prayer, and I'll invite Reverend Chris to open us in prayer.
So appreciate seeing your smiling faces, and I know they're smiling even though I can't see them. Let's take a moment to unite. That's all of us in this room right now and everyone that is participating online. Remind ourselves the power that lies in spiritual community. That's a community that goes beyond time, space, form, and matter, goes beyond the walls of Temple Israel here where we have gathered, into the hearts of every individual that has been served and supported in any way by this powerful spiritual vortex that we call Unity on the Bay. And in these annual meetings, I also like to call to mind the countless numbers of individuals who have preceded us in our more than 90 years of existence, facing all manner of opportunity as well as trial, to ensure that we are here providing the liberating message of spiritual truth to the city of Miami and far beyond into the world. We are united in the spirit of truth. And we consciously and intentionally, in this time that we share together this evening, give ourselves, our minds, our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, our bodies, our actions, our lives to the spirit of truth that created us and that is forever present with us. Even during the past decade, we have seen time and time again this spirit of truth supporting us through changes and challenges, and most especially during this past year. We take this moment now to say thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you to the pure, unconditioned nature of God that dwells within every one of us, for what has been, for what is now, and for what we anticipate is yet to come as we continue this journey now and forever, forward in faith. We let it be, so it is, and amen.
So we've had a lot of change in the last year, and I've coped with almost all of it, but I'm not sure about this podium. But we'll deal. The other one was kind of sturdier, had more places for all my junk, but it's okay. I'll manage. All right, the reading of the bylaws for this meeting as it relates to the elections we'll be having this evening. So the section is Article 4, Section 4, 10A, and 4.10B. Qualifications. To be eligible to serve on the Board of Trustees, a person must be an active member of this ministry for 1 year immediately preceding her or his election. In addition, candidates for election shall endeavor to live in accordance with the unity principles, work to further the vision and mission of this ministry through active interest, love, and support, be a sincere and continuing student of unity, always remaining conversant with its teachings, and shall have demonstrated leadership capabilities and/or core competencies in areas relevant to the good governance of this ministry. The Nominating Committee. Selection. A nominating committee shall be formed at least 3 months prior to the annual membership meeting. The committee will consist of the senior minister and 3 members selected in the following manner. A, the board will elect one of its trustees, not up for re-election, to serve on the nominating committee, who shall serve as chairperson. This individual is Mary McHenry. The board shall select one member from the membership of the ministry other than a trustee. Such member may alternatively be elected by vote of the membership at the annual meeting. The minister and the 2 selected committee members shall select the 4th member from the membership of this ministry. 2, duties and responsibilities. The nominating committee will initiate a search for at least one qualified candidate not already serving on the board per available position for nomination as members of the Board of Trustees. The report of the nominating committee will be provided to all members at least 10 days prior to the annual membership meeting in accordance with Section 3.5C of these bylaws. The technical stuff is out of the way. And to do the nominating committee report this evening, Mary McHenry, chair of the nominating committee. And you need to get a mic over there.
Mr. President and members of the Unity on the Bay community, the Board of Trustees selected me to serve as chairperson of the nominating committee in conjunction with Reverend Chris Jackson, Amy Baez, and Dennis Carmen. The standard procedure of the nominating committee is to invite members to apply for the board by submitting an application, resume, references, cover letter stating the reasons why they'd like to serve on the Board of Trustees. We meet with all the responding candidates to confirm membership and the leadership requirements are met. We then conduct interviews with the qualified candidates. Each committee member questions the candidates. This process enables us to know the candidates better and to more effectively assess them as possible trustees. This year, there are 3 vacancies on the board. The terms of 3 board members, Ileana Rodriguez, Laura Thazine, and Hamara Font, are ending. The nominating committee renominated and approved the current members, Ileana Rodriguez and Laura Thazine, who wanted to run for re-election as a candidate. In addition, there is one new candidate, Nicholas Brunzel, who has been approved by the nominating committee. Unity Worldwide Ministries encourages the recruitment of trustees who possess a high spiritual consciousness, as well as specific and needed professional expertise. This balance of skills and attributes help ensure the sound leadership of our spiritual community. The committee feels confident the candidates met the qualifications requested by Worldwide Ministries. At this time, I would like to call for any nominations from the floor. Please note that anyone making a nomination from the floor will be given a form and should review and check the list of needed skills determined by the nominating committee for the Board of Trustees. You're right, it is small. Be prepared to speak of the needed interest, skills, and experience the nominee can offer to the congregation. At this time, the nominations are closed.
Thanks, Mary. Where did I put my mask? All right, here we go. We got to talk about this podium. It's a setup. All right, good evening again, and thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening, those of you here in the room and those of you joining us online. I hope you have all been staying safe. It's been a very tough time. Some have been sick, others of us have lost loved ones, and through it all, it is my hope that Unity on the Bay has been here to support you. It's strange to be up here tonight just 4 months after our last membership meeting. Usually, there's a year between meetings. But our last meeting was delayed until November because of the pandemic, And our last meeting actually was our first in-person activity since we shut down last year in March. Since then, though, we've reopened for in-person services, something that took great effort and energy to ensure we did it safely. To say that this ministry has experienced a lot of change in the last 12 months, this podium aside, would be an understatement. Just a little more than a year ago, we started hearing about this disease called coronavirus. And soon after, we were first forced to shut down and go home. There were no in-person services, no classes, pretty much everything had to shut down as part of our nation's pandemic response. This organization had to move quickly and go almost into survival mode, like most organizations whose business models were based on in-person activities and whose most important product is community and connection. Almost overnight, the ministers and staff embraced our online model, and I'm proud that Unity on the Bay didn't miss a beat. Our team developed a host of new services and programming using Facebook, Zoom, and YouTube. Our services went virtual and to an elevated production quality we hadn't been able to achieve before. On the business side, it was really scary. Revenues plunged, our investments took a near $2 million hit. Your leadership has worked tirelessly to get this organization through a very dark period. We kept the faith, held to principles, and did the work. Through months of dedication, the staff and board were able to not only keep this organization afloat, but most importantly, serving you throughout this time of great need and ultimately keeping our community very together. Thank you. The board also made the decision to continue paying all staff and contract workers for several months after we shuttered. Through it all, though, we had stability where it counted most among our ministers, our staff, and our leadership, and together we continued to move forward. We worked closely with our wealth advisors and recovered our investments and then some. You'll hear more about that from our treasurer, Steve McCoy, later this evening. We began having in-person services again in December. A special thank you goes to the reopening task force, which worked for several months to ensure we reopened safely and properly. Every detail from how congregants would enter this room and exit, to how we'd seat people, to ensuring we had all the necessary supplies like sanitizer, signage, creating a registration process, ensuring proper sanitation and distancing, setting up barriers to protect staff. The list goes on and on. You really wouldn't believe how much work and how many details had to be addressed so we could reopen. But the board gave the green light to reopening, and thanks to the task force, we were ready. Since then, we have expanded in-person attendance to now allow up to 45 people. At the same time, we had to make improvements to our broadcasting quality and invested in new equipment and talent. If you weren't aware, before, services were being recorded, edited, and then broadcast. But once we reopened to in-person, we had to figure out how to do it all at the same time and live. Going live meant we had to do something we hadn't done before at a quality level we hadn't done before. We continue looking at ways to expand in-person services and activities. We recently added prayer nooks to allow, they're not in the room? No. To allow congregants to experience in-person prayer again with our chaplains. We created drop-off areas for our Angels Everywhere outreach drives. Right now, we're collecting toiletries for the homeless. And by Easter, we are looking to implement a contactless version of our pop-up bookstore, so just right around the corner. During the pandemic, we were also able to provide support to our spiritual community, the broader Unity movement, and our community at large here in South Florida. We provided months of support in the form of public gift cards for a year to congregants in need. This allowed many congregants to buy food and access much-needed medicine. We've sponsored numerous food distributions with local food bank Farm Share, providing fresh and nutritious food to more than 1,500 families and counting, something we will continue to do. We made a $50,000 contribution to UWM's fund to help Unity ministries that were severely impacted and struggling to survive during the pandemic. Unlike many other Unity communities, we were very lucky that we had sold our building, providing us the financial strength to not only withstand the impacts, but support our community, expand programming, and invest in our digital future. Had we not sold that building, which we all loved very much and still hold dearly in our hearts, we'd likely be in a much different situation today, a much more dire one. It's easy to look at this pandemic as something negative or bad. Unfortunately, we have principles to lean on, to see it right and help us get through this time. And a lot of good things have actually happened during this pandemic. In addition to the community support, the elevated broadcasting services, and added programming, you may recall Reverend Chris received the Charles Fillmore Award for Leadership from Unity Worldwide Ministries. Much deserved. Like I said, we successfully went digital, and today we are streaming high-quality live services, and this is undoubtedly a very important part of our future. We received a PPP loan through our bank for more than $82,000, which helped us maintain payroll during the worst of the pandemic, and we expect to receive a second-round PPP loan in the next few days for about the same amount, and the good news is both of these loans are forgivable as part of the Federal CARES Act. As I mentioned, the board also voted unanimously to continue paying band members and other contract staff that we weren't using. We had special events with Panache Desai, the Ruiz brothers, Jack Canfield, Deepak Chopra, who was just here very recently to read well, not here physically, but to read the Daily Word. We hit a milestone on our Facebook page with 10,000 followers, and our website received over 50,000 unique visits last year. And since, yeah, that's huge. And since just November, we've grown our online audience by 600 people. These are followers on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And we've had more than 12,000 unique visits to our website. We also celebrated Reverend Juan's 15th anniversary as a member of the Unity on the Bay, I don't want to say United, Unity on the Bay staff. We couldn't have a gala, but we surely had fun with our Jingle Bells and Bumpers event with about 60 cars and almost 200 people attending. That was fun. We stood with the Black Lives Matter movement and marched in support of racial justice. And today, this activism has evolved into the Racial Justice Ministry, which is providing programming to continue the important dialogue and work around healing racism in our country and community. And very soon, despite this pandemic, we will be consecrating 21 prayer chaplains as part of our prayer chaplain ministry during our retreat in April. That's awesome. Unfortunately, what this pandemic did mean is a lost year in our path to find a new building or property. But in the last few months, we have been restarting our strategic planning process, which we need to complete before we can purchase a new home. It's a very simple proposition. We need to have a plan before we buy a building, because the last thing I want to do is go into a building and then figure out what we're going to do with it. Think about it. During the last few months, we've held various listening sessions, the connection sessions presented by the Building Our Future Congregational Care and Communication Committee. Now that's a mouthful. The listening sessions have provided key insights that have helped inform our planning. We hired a new director of business operations that is anchoring this effort, and with inputs from these listening sessions and interviews of staff, board, extended leadership, congregants and non-congregants, as well as information from our architects program and work with our consultant, a strategic plan is emerging. The next steps will include deeper engagement with the various constituency groups here at the church, possibly surveys, more listening sessions for sure, and then you'll be hearing a bit more about this from Reverend Chris later, so I don't want to steal his thunder, and I'm going to leave the strategic plan there. What I've learned through this entire process, and many of you have heard me say this before, is that we're working on God's time. Market timing that could only be credited to God has set us up quite well. We sold at the top of the market, and it looks like we'll be buying at a time when the market is soft, especially in some of the sectors we're considering. One property we looked at has already had a price drop of more than $1.5 million. Ultimately, listen to this because this is the news. My personal goal is to identify a property by late summer or early fall. We are also beginning the much-needed work on our decades-old bylaws. They are very out of date and frankly don't offer the necessary framework for effective governance in our current reality. It's not sexy or exciting work at all, but these bylaws are what secure this organization and ensure its continuity. And as we look to the future, it is definitely very bright. I have no doubt that we will get through this pandemic and we will flourish on the other side of it because of the amazing staff we have, the solid board and extended leadership that guide this organization, and the congregation, all of you, that forms its foundation. Before I close, I'd like to thank some folks. First of all, the volunteers that have helped us with check-in, that will help us with the vote counting later this evening. Thank you for your time. I should say sacred servers. Between last November's meeting and tonight's, 3 board members have rotated off: Ray Melton, Leslie Rosen, and tonight, Haimara Font. I'd like to thank each of you for your service and dedication. We also have an amazing staff. Yeah. And we certainly wouldn't be where we are today without the staff. So I'd like to ask the staff to stand up and for you guys to show them some love. Please. As I've learned from Chris, Reverend Chris, the 2 words that cannot be said enough are thank you. So thank you to our amazing staff. I'd also like to thank Amy Baez, who is not here tonight, who served on our nominating committee and has been working through our Building Our Future Care and Communication Committee to host listening sessions during the last few months. I also want to thank Mary McHenry, who has given this organization so much over so many years, this time taking the task of running our nominating committee, which we know is sort of like a punishment on the Board of Trustees. Just kidding. Actually, that's being secretary, but don't tell Michelle. And I also want to thank our treasurer, Steve McCoy, who has worked tirelessly with Mary, myself, and the other members of the Finance Committee to navigate the fiscal challenges presented by this pandemic. And let me tell you, it has been a very scary ride, but God doesn't dish out anything we can't take. Thank you, Steve, for being on point for that. You know, we can look at the challenges we've faced and those ahead of us in so many different ways. For me, I'm excited because I know that this ministry, as it approaches its centennial, has its best years before it, and the future is bright. The best is yet to come. There is still much work to be done, and I'm committed to seeing it through. And I hope we can count on each and every one of you to do your part as we build our future together and move forward together in faith. Thank you. Now, typically we would do the President's Awards at this time, but that's something we're going to be skipping since we did them at the drive-in event. So we're going to skip 1 year and allow the ones that we just did in December to stand. And now I'd like to ask Steve to come up and do the Treasurer's Report. And just grab your mic on the way up, Steve, please. And I'll make room for you on this tiny podium.
This is a little strange. Good evening. Good evening, Unity on the Bay. Before we get into the financial statements, I want to take you on a prosperous financial journey. It's actually a journey we've been on together for the past 2 years. Actually, it began a long time before that, but if I went back further, we'd be here a lot longer tonight. It's sometimes nice to look back, reminisce, and it helps us put life in perspective. So it was fourth quarter 2018 that it was announced Unity on the Bay had an official sale of our Unity property at 411. And as part of that sale, we would have to move from 411 by June 2019. Soon thereafter, the buyer informed us that they wanted us to move out by March 2019. The board negotiated with the buyer for additional $300,000 in order to move by the end of March. And the scramble was on to find a new space. Fortunately and quickly, discussions began with Temple Israel. After much back and forth, Unity on the Bay entered into a rental agreement, and we had a transitional home at Temple Israel. The staff got to work determining what would have to go to storage, what would have to go with them, and what could be thrown out. If you've ever moved, you know how stressful it can be. You always have 10 times more stuff to move than you thought you had, and spend a lot of time procrastinating and wondering, how am I ever going to do this? It was pretty impressive what the staff accomplished. After decades of years in 411, and Unity on the Bay was ready for service the following week after the move. But before that move, on March 17th, 2 years from yesterday, 2019, we had one heck of a send-off. We rocked 411 with a jam-packed full house. The music of the Unity on the Bay Choir with Dale leading, Nicole Henry, Mariel Epps, and more filled our hearts. Reverend Chris Jackson gave one of his most inspiring talks to lift our spirits. We left our love notes on the walls of 411, and we transitioned to our new temporary home, Temple Israel. Behind the scenes, the staff was working feverishly to make a smooth transition and make us feel comfortable in our new space. The choir sound system and projectors needed to be installed. A new stage had to be put in place. We set up live streaming equipment, proper lighting, a pop-up bookstore, a kid zone, and so much more detail work had to be done. And it did get done. On the financial perspective, Unity on the Bay had $29 million sitting in its bank account for a new home. Can I hear a thank you, God? The challenge was to make that money grow. The Finance Committee interviewed about 9 wealth management companies and dwindled the list down to 5. The board interviewed the 5 companies and selected 2, City National Bank and Mellon Bank of New York, to handle our investments. A Unity on the Bay Investment Committee was established, a Unity on the Bay investment policy statement was developed, and by December 2019, our cash proceeds were being invested to grow. At the same time, in September 2019, the board interviewed about 3 to 4 real estate agents for our new home. One agent was selected, and the board began seeing properties to get a feel for the real estate market, available buildings, lots, and prices. So with 2019 coming to an end, we moved from 411, transitioned to Temple Israel, Unity on the Bay cash proceeds from the sale were invested, and investigative work into finding our new home was beginning. 2019 was quite a year. Enter a new year, 2020. Your staff and board are able to breathe a little, feeling a sense of progress, our community manifesting a new home. And bam, in March 2020, COVID-19 hits and lockdowns begin. A world health pandemic was about to present situations and challenges never experienced in our lifetime, and there was no roadmap. So how did Unity handle 2020? 100% online services and classes. As Eddie mentioned, we didn't miss a beat. We provided financial assistance to our community through Publix gift cards. We had our backpack drive and still achieved over 5,000 backpacks for the children of Miami, for organizations here in Miami, and around the world. As Eddie mentioned, we invested in quality live streaming, and we are seeing the paybacks to that already. Chris mentioned to the board that at the last new membership meeting, we had 2 members from outside of the state of Florida. So we are reaching now outside of our locality. We supported many, many families and organizations with our Christmas Joy program. We had 3 farm share events providing food for the community. Each event provided over 500 boxes of food for needy families. We reopened, social distanced with CDC guidelines for in-person services, and that was no easy decision. Over the past 2 years, because of the sale of the 411 property, the board has approved over $1.2 million from sales proceeds to support the Unity on the Bay ministry, our community, and reaching beyond our greater community. Now that was a Unity response to 2020 and a health pandemic, after being thrown in some deep, uncharted waters. And here we are 1 year later in the midst of March meditation madness. Let's take a deep breath. Feeling grateful that we are here tonight to continue our journey together, knowing whatever this journey brings, we are truly an amazing, resilient community. And with our Unity principles and teachings, we can handle whatever comes our way. We always say, when we have a plan, God laughs. This experience, this story that I'm telling you, all happened in divine order. And just as our values states, we are spirit-led. I tell you this story because sometimes the hard work, perseverance, determination, and love of our community doesn't show up in a profit and loss statement. Actually, from a financial perspective, Unity wouldn't be here today if we had not sold the building at 411. God truly works in mysterious ways. But what you will see from tonight's presentation is that Unity on the Bay is in a great position to move forward, develop and grow our community, and find a wonderful, beautiful new home. So, are you ready for some numbers? Need a magnifying glass? So this is our P&L for 2020 versus 2019. You probably can't see it, but I'm just going to read because you're going to, most of it due to the pandemic, I'm just going to point out major variances. So our total revenues for 2020 were $630,280. For 2019, they were $1,311,856. So the variance was $681,000 negative. Our services, due to having to go to online services, were $266,161 compared to 2019, $355,185. So that was a variance of $89,000. Another major variance in, we had $100,733 in interest income in 2020. In 2019, we had $498,844 for a variance of roughly $400,000. And the reason for that was when we first got the funds for the sale of the building, we put that in a money market account at City National Bank from 2 to 2.5%. Which was really above what we could get anyplace else. City National Bank has dealt with us very well. And so that's most of the interest income there. As I mentioned, and you'll see, in December 2019, we then had the funds fully invested, and you'll see we've done much better than we would have at the interest rate. If we look at special events, We had $122,050 in 2020 compared to we had $29,639 in special events compared to $164,601 for a variance of roughly $135,000. We didn't have a gala in 2020. We also didn't have a lot of special event speakers, which we usually do. And then the bookstore. As you know, we're not having live events. We had, didn't have a bookstore, so we had revenues of $7,026 compared to $29,712 for a variance of $22,000. So those were the major variances. This is, again, mainly due to the pandemic. Looking at expenses, our expenses are $984,524 compared to 2019, $1,180,550 for a positive variance of $196,026. Major variances were in services. Since we weren't having live services, we didn't have the musicians. So in the services, we had $538,679 compared to 2019, $574,251. Under general administrative and properties and facilities, $286,078 compared to $315,902. That was mainly moving expenses and transition expenses. We also had special events, again, $23,635 against $98,925 for a variance of $75,000. Again, we didn't have a gala and we had less speakers. And again, the bookstore, $6,353 compared to $28,019 for a variance of $21,666. Again, that we didn't have the bookstore at that time. In tithing, and outreach, $245,520 versus $87,058. So we had $158,462 more in tithing. The board had approved the $190,000 for relief for COVID. That included the farm shares, that included the public's gift cards, and other things that addressed the community as far as COVID. So that's why the tithing was higher. So total expenses were $1,233,954 versus last year to $1,279,115. So there were $45,161 less. So we had a loss on the bottom line in 2020 of $603,674 versus in 2019 we made a little money, $32,741. So the negative variance was $636,415. You can see down below in gray, that $650,000 was part of the $1.2 million that I talked about that the board had approved, and that's what the board approved to be transferred in 2020 to cover for cash flow purposes because of the $600,000 net loss. We also have a similar number of $600,000 in the 2021 plan. Looking at our balance sheet, our operating account is $94,000 as of the end of December. Oh, just to mention also, we are currently under audit. These are unaudited numbers, but our auditor has told us that there aren't any changes that are coming, and we should have an audit within the next couple of weeks, which will be posted on the website. Looking at the operating account, we have $94,859. In our money market account, we have $1,794,492. In our petty cash account, we have $500. And accounts receivable, $3,676. In our investments in BNY, we have $9,711,966. In City National Bank, we have $13,155,854. That's in inventory, we have $1,626, and our prepaid expenses, $40,217. So our total current assets are $24,803,190. Our total fixed assets are $74,967. We have deposits of $11,904. That's mainly our security deposits for Temple Israel and our 2,800 on Biscayne. Our board-designated endowment is $5,560,719. So our total assets are $30,450,780. Looking at our liabilities and net assets, we have accounts payable of $72,328, a deferred credit of $2,973, short-term liabilities, $32,419, so our total liabilities are $107,711. Our net assets board designated $29,565,794. That's mainly the sale of our property. We had our operating loss for the year of $603,674. You can see we have a current unrealized gain on our investment of $1,339,968. And so that's what we made in 2020 on our investment of $27 million. We have temporarily restricted funds of $17,100, and year-to-date temporarily restricted funds, which donors have designated as $23,881. So our total liabilities and assets are $30,450,780. Looking at our investment portfolio, this gives you an idea from the time of inception, which was in December 2019. We invested $27 million. As Eddie mentioned, we had a heart attack in March. Didn't we, Eddie? We dropped almost $2 million. You know, Eddie's a very, very patient guy. And, you know, brother, I wouldn't want to be on this journey with anyone else. You know, your comfort and your solid leadership is amazing. So thank you so much for that. And we held with our wealth managers. We have quarterly meetings with them. We question them. We hear their guidance. We usually stick with their guidance, and we did. And as you can see, we are now hovering over $28 million in our investments. And you probably have watched the market January, February, and March. It's pretty volatile. We're holding pretty steady. We're up probably about 100,000. We'll actually see that in the next slide. Yeah. Okay, so we have our initial portfolio. We invested, that's our endowment fund. We invested $5 million, and we now have $5 million as of March 12th. We have $5,687,884. So our return since investing is 13.8%. That's a very, very good return. We're very heavy, we're looking long-term there, so we're stronger in equities, heavy in equities. More risk, but more reward, as you can see. Our temporary fund, and that's the funds for our home, we're being more conservative in investing those funds. We invested $22 million. We currently have $22,738,035, 3.4% return. It's so we're $738,000 better. And so if you look at our total portfolio, $27 million we invested, and as of March 12th, we're at $28,425,884, roughly $1.4 million better. So as I mentioned on the balance sheet, we were at the end of the year, 1,336,000. Now it's up to 1,425,000. So roughly 100,000 we've made in the last couple of months. And that is the financial report.
Thank you, Steve. I can't tell you how much, and many of you will probably know this by having been to previous meetings, how much those numbers have changed over the last few years. And one of the things that's important to note is that our investments and the gains are far exceeding our loss. So you can see that the board funded a rather large loss, as well as a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Your favorite word? Tithing, and to the tune of $1.2 million, and we still grew our total assets by $1.3 million. So that is to be just out of this world. And I think, thank you. And I think it's important to point out why we have sort of two different pies there. The endowment fund is really what the board has set aside as what we hope will be the minimum permanent endowment for the benefit of Unity, and as well as foundation or possibly community work and tithing. And we don't expect that the entire other 20, what is it, Steve, 22 million is going to necessarily go into a building, but it's definitely, a sizable chunk of that is going to go into buying a new property. So fingers crossed, because obviously the more that it's left in the nest egg, you see how it works, and that's money that can be invested in a lot of different things other than buildings, like expanding the ministry and the work of Unity on the Bay. So let's keep our fingers crossed that that endowment fund is a lot bigger than $5 million when we're done. All right, and now for the presentation of the candidates, I'd like to ask Mary to come back up to the stage.
Typically, we would take each candidate for 2 minutes with me coming back and asking them to come up. So given the mic situation and transferring the mics, I'm going to go ahead and say that we're going to ask Nick to come up and speak for 2 minutes, then Ileana to come up and speak for 2 minutes, and then Laura to come up and speak for 2 minutes. So that would help with the mics. So each candidate will come forward for a 2-minute statement on why he or she would like to serve on the board.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see everybody's smiling faces from the nose up. I thought it was 20 minutes, so I have a lot prepared, but I guess it's just 2, so I'll try to shorten it down. Just kidding. First off, thank you to the nominating committee for taking the time to interview me and giving me the pass. So thank you to the 3 of you folks who took the time to interview me. Also, thank you to Juan and to Chris, who obviously I wouldn't be here without you guys, your support with Eddie over the last 6-7 years, growing, developing me spiritually, because when I showed up to Unity, obviously I wasn't anywhere near where I was today. So, when I first started with Unity 6-7 years ago, I would show up, sometimes in swimming trunks, headed to the pool party afterward, and getting all the spiritual food that I could, right? And I was in and I was out, and I was loving it, and I was getting where I needed to go, but I started to realize that I needed to give back. And my first step to giving back to serving was trying to help out with a children's ministry, right? That was a surprise. I love kids, but I didn't, it was a little bit much for me. So I kind of took another step back, kind of just started attending again, taking my time, and then I realized, Maybe ushering was where I wanted to spend my time volunteering, you know? So I forget her name right now. No. Alina, right? So we all remember Alina, who passed, who was one of the main ushers back at 411. I started ushering with her, and I still think about her every Sunday because we had such a good connection, such a wonderful lady. And I really found my passion there, you know, to greet back in the old days, right, when we could hug and kiss and you know, embrace in the morning, you know, getting that vibe and giving that vibe to people who didn't have that vibe or needed that vibe really fed me spiritually. And now I was still getting, felt more than I was giving, but I was volunteering and I was doing what I love to do. You know, so I really think that the head usher position is where I see myself for the unforeseeable future. I love doing it. I love the opportunity that I have right now to run for the Board of Trustees. I thank everybody for coming tonight. I look forward to your check mark in my name, and thank you so much. I love you all.
Good evening, friends. So a few years ago, I returned to Unity at a moment in my life when the gates of heaven had seemed to have parted. Metaphorically speaking, of course. A mere 6 months later, I found myself confused and heartbroken, really. I began searching for atonement, needing to own responsibility for the things I was creating. I quickly immersed myself in everything Unity. Through our Spirit Group program, I met wonderful people. I began my meditation practice, and I took various SEE courses to gain a better understanding of the Unity principles. It was the ultimate paradox, you see. Because of that heartbreak, I really did find the greatest love of my life. I finally learned to love myself. I began to understand that love is dependent on the state of the giver, not the merit of the receiver. I attribute the spiritual and emotional growth I've experienced in these years to this spiritual community. Because of this, I'm called to give back as much as possible. It is both an honor and a pleasure to serve as an usher on the Spirit Group Council, on the Care and Communications Subcommittee for Building Our Future, and if re-elected here tonight on our amazing Board of Trustees. In closing, I give you my commitment to continue to serve with gratitude, generosity, integrity, being Spirit-led through wisdom, representing the diversity of this community we all love. Thank you for your part in my journey.
Is it on? Yes, it's on. Good evening, Unity on the Bay family. First, I want to thank you for your support during the past year. It was a difficult year, but knowing that I have your spiritual community that I can rely on, people that I can call to help me get through those days. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Second, it is a privilege for me to be standing in front of you to be re-elected on the Board of Trustees. I've been doing this forever. I feel like this is my life purpose. So for those who don't know me, I've been coming here forever, more than 20 years, and I have served in many, many positions, from family ministry, feeding people in transition, prayer chaplain. The only thing that I haven't done yet is angels everywhere. So hopefully one day I get to do it. But being on the board has been a blessing in my life because I have learn to give more than I receive. The people that I serve with are amazing. I have a family, a spiritual family on the board. And I can use my skills as a certified public accountant. I can use my skills and give back to my community. And most of all, I can actually be present to give more and to be more committed to my community. So if I'm elected, well, I guess I'm going to be elected again because we have only three candidates. Hopefully, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. If I'm elected again, I'm committed to represent our community during the next 3 years, because we are going to have many, many changes, not only on the board, but also we are going to look for a new home. So I'm committed to give more and to be more and to love you more. Thanks.
Thank you to the 3 candidates for the Board of Trustees. So now we come to the voting. And as Laura pointed out, there really isn't much of a mystery here. But please go ahead and check your ballots. There are 3 candidates. Since all terms are for 3 years, all you need to do is make a check. I'll give you a few minutes, and then we'll announce the inevitable. Once you complete your ballot, please place it in the basket. I can assure you there will be no lawsuits for a recount after this one. If there are, it really wouldn't matter. All right, does anyone have a ballot left after Ray? Okay, Juanita has a ballot, and all right, this is the last call for ballots for the most competitive election ever in Unity on the Bay Board history. All right, now I'd like to bring up the man, the myth, the legend, our senior minister, Reverend Chris, for the senior minister's report.
Thanks, Eddie, and good evening again, everyone. I want to say again how much I appreciate your being here in this room and online, because I believe that it's a real clear demonstration of your love and support for this community, that you come here to participate in this entire process and to hear directly about what's happening in the community. You know, we've learned, as I've said many times already, that we are more than a building, and we've even learned that we are more than a physical gathering. We're really a union of souls. A number of years ago, when we first embarked on this whole experience of finding our new home, we wrote this affirmation: we give thanks that Unity on the Bay's right and perfect home is now manifesting under the guidance of God. Now, that's not an unusual affirmation for Unity to speak regarding anything, that we know we're under God's direction, but sometimes we say it, and I'm not sure we always know what we're saying. When it comes to Unity on the Bay, I think it's important to remember we have 90 years of spiritual consciousness that have been developed here. So we are part of a great collective. It's the collective of everybody that's involved today and also everyone that's been involved over many years. And when I say that this is unfolding under the guidance of God, what I'm speaking of is, yes, the infinite, invisible, almighty intelligence and creativity of an entire universe, but I'm saying that specifically focuses through the collective consciousness of everybody that's a part of the community today and everyone that ever has been a part of the community over more than 90 years. So it's very powerful and it can be trusted. I say this because last Saturday I was engaged in a Zoom gathering of our leadership core, and one of the issues that rose, and I want to speak directly to it tonight, was regarding the strategic plan that's moving us in the direction of our future in our new building. What was stated was that this process is not like previous strategic processes that we have entered into, because some people have the understanding that simply a board or simply a staff or simply a new business director of operations was actually creating the process, the content, as well as the plan that we're moving into right now. And I wanted to make it really clear, this plan is designed around a process that, from my perspective, has been taking place since 2013. That's the last time we did a comprehensive strategic plan. And if you were here, you know that we drew people together, a large group of people, and we engaged in both the process of that plan and the plan itself. So it was grassroots from the ground up. And it may appear to some of you as though, because we have not had a grassroots effort per se to create this process or to develop this process that ultimately makes the plan, that you have not been engaged in this process, or the community at large has not been as engaged as you have been in the past. And what I wanted to tell you is, I believe you've been engaged more than ever before, though you may not realize it. And I wanted to bring some clarity to that in my report this evening. We're in the hands, number one, of an agenda that's larger than we know. And it goes back to 2013 when we did that original strategic plan. This is why I don't fold my notes, Eddie, on Sunday mornings, because of this lectern. It's very important. They stay much better when you don't fold them. That's when we captured the vision in 2013. We realized that that vision was not going to be able to be contained in the facility that we had at 411, but it could fund it. It was at that time then that we moved forward in receiving a tremendously, almost unanimous vote to sell the property. We found a broker. You've heard all of this already this evening. We went onto the market. We hired an architect. We solicited information from every stakeholder, group of stakeholders in the community. So beginning in 2013, we developed this vision. You may remember, and I'm going to share it with you again. I'm just going to ask you to take a moment and close your eyes and listen to these words. This is the same vision statement that I shared with you when we left 411 just about 2 years ago to the day. So listen to this and take this in and visualize this in your mind and in your heart. As the Unity work in Miami approaches its centennial, plans have begun toward implementing a new vision for the future. Following the sale of its home of more than 60 years, Unity is seeking a new location in which to create a community center serving all of Miami that offers an even more diverse variety of spiritually oriented activities. These include the healing arts, children's education, peaceful green spaces, water features, and a relaxing ambiance. It will be a haven of spiritual liberation and celebration for gatherings of people of all cultures, lifestyles, and faiths, arranged to meet the need for flexibility in today's busy world. The new Unity will be an oasis of inspiration suitable for retreats and a premier venue of enlightenment, offering internationally acclaimed speakers and educational programs to support our inclusive community as it serves as a catalyst for spiritual awakening, evolution, and action. It will include a comfortable retail and food service venue for fellowship and a meeting facility that supports worldwide media with state-of-the-art technology. The future of unity, a landmark of humanity inspired to its divinity. You can open your eyes, and I hope you captured that. I told you 2 years ago we didn't have an architectural rendering, and we still don't. But you know exactly what you just experienced in your mind. And I do believe with all my heart that what we are moving into will be the sum total of the collection of all of our visions. Remembering, I want you to remember, this was created in 2013. So this has been many years in the development. That's when we recognized what it was that we wanted, what it was that we dreamed of, and what our vision was that we were holding for this magnificent future. Have we had some apparent pitfalls along the way? You could call them that. You know, we had to move, as Steve so beautifully reminded us, in 2019, and that was a monumental year of accomplishment. In many ways, the move to Temple Israel further clarified the vision that originated in 2013. It didn't go away. In fact, it enhanced, I believe, through that experience. It further enhanced itself in 2020 when we experienced the arrival of COVID. Most definitely, my dear friends, we are closer to this state-of-the-art technology and outreach than we have ever been before. And I tell you, I don't know that it would have happened, certainly not as promptly as it did, had it not been for COVID pushing us, forcing us, if you will, as sometimes we all know the hand of God tends to do. All the resources that were required were available to us. In November of 2020, as Eddie mentioned, we hired the Director of Business Operations, Ashley Troy. And I want you to hear this. It was not Ashley's assignment from me or from anyone to create the content of a new strategic plan. The content was already at hand. The stakeholders involved had already been solicited. We had the input. We knew where we wanted to go, but we needed to make sure that where we were going was going to be a viable enterprise and that it would be sustainable in the future. I cannot tell you in my years of ministry how many stories I've heard of church communities who experienced windfalls and then went out and created their vision without any idea of how they were going to sustain that vision. So the purpose of this plan that we're developing, that in the next few months we're going to be sharing with you in closer detail, is not something that any one individual or even a small group of individuals came together to compose. It is something that has been developed and maturing over 8 years. Or is that 7? No, it's 8 years, since 2013. So I want you to hear this. We're all in this already, and we're all having opportunities to be able to further refine it as it is shared with different stakeholder groups within the community, whether those be the board, which is going to be happening in the next week or so. We're going to be sharing how the content of the vision has now been translated into a strategic plan so that we're sure that we're creating something that's viable and sustainable toward the future. Do you hear me on this? So I want to make sure you understand that we have been soliciting content. We're working from the information and the vision of the collective. Now we're just simply putting it into the strategy to be able to make it happen. And even that we will return with to receive your feedback and your input to say, yeah, that's exactly where we knew we were going since 2013, or that was our vision that we were holding. And yes, indeed, it's been refined. And if there are further refinements, one of the things I also want to emphasize is this plan is not something that's created with a beginning and an end. Within the plan, there is also a procedure, a process for keeping the plan alive, for recognizing that it's organic and allowing it to evolve. This all comes together with many years of investment on our part. You know, the 2013 plan, the interviews that we did with the architects, the contexto information gathering sessions that we presented, many interviews with principal players, information from the connection sessions that have been already mentioned, put together by Amy Baez and our Building Our Future Congregational Care and Communications Subcommittee. So this plan really does belong to all of us because you've all been engaged in the content, and I'm not sure everyone has realized that. I wanted to make it really clear tonight. It's our launching pad, and it's exciting, and it's going to move us, I think, in a really positive direction toward the future that we've all been dreaming of. As far as I can see, there's not really anything spectacularly new in terms of content in it, but it is a clarification and a refinement in terms of how we're going to get there. And that's so important. That's what Eddie was saying. We don't want to move into a building or a facility that we do not have clarity around exactly how every square foot is going to be utilized and how every square foot will be serving a purpose. So, as I said at the onset, this is part of a larger agenda. Every step of the way, and I'm here to testify like I wouldn't testify about very many things in my life. Every step of the way, this process has drawn to it the right people at the right time. You've heard many of the names tonight, and Steve, I thank you for mentioning Eddie's name, but I want to mention it again. You know, there was a level of expertise required to move us through this, a level of professionalism, a level of savvy that was not existing within Unity on the Bay until Eddie Dominguez appeared as president. And his personal ownership of this, and I mean that in the sense of his passion for it and his love of Unity on the Bay, has been hugely instrumental. So you stood up here and thanked a number of people a while ago. I want you to know, my brother, we could never have done this without the individualized expression of God that you are. So thank you to Eddie, thank you to our Board of Trustees, thank you to our staff. We're doing a lot of this tonight, but I can't just stand up here and not do it myself as well. Our outstanding leadership core, our sacred, our visionary stewards, our donors, our members, our friends. Indeed, we do give thanks that Unity on the Bay's right and perfect home is manifesting under the guidance of God. When something is under the guidance of God, my friends, you cannot predict and control it. You just can't. You might try, but it's an exercise in futility and frustration. You have to intend and allow. We've set the intention. I'm willing to allow its unfoldment. I trust that you all will as well. There's a favorite line of mine from A Course in Miracles that says, trust would solve every problem now. So I have an addendum to our original Building Our Future affirmation. It is this: I entrust the future of Unity on the Bay to the hands of God. I entrust the future of Unity on the Bay to the hands of God. Will you affirm that with me? I entrust the future of Unity on the Bay to the hands of God. I appreciate that, my friends. There's no powerful statement, no more powerful statement you could have made. Love you.
Drum roll, please. Dale, come on, where's the drum? So the results of the election are, we have a three-way tie. No. So yes, actually it is a three-way tie because they each got 27 votes. So we are returning Laura and Ileana to the board and electing Nick for the first time to the Board of Trustees. So thank you very much for agreeing to serve. And thank each and every one of you for turning out tonight and doing your part to be informed and participate in a very important sacred act for your spiritual community. The board isn't this, strange group of people that are out there somewhere. Well, I'm strange, but that aside, we are you, and you are us, and we are Unity on the Bay. So I know I say this to people individually. I'm always accessible, so if you ever have a question, a concern, or anything, my cell phone is 786-909-9494. Call me, seriously. I'm accessible. Laura said it best, and I hadn't thought about it this way. The next 3 years are going to be very key years and the last 3 have been very key too. But if you think about it, in the next 3 years, we're going to be making this move into our new property. And these 3 folks are going to be on your Board of Trustees during that time. So thank you for taking on that enormous responsibility. And it's definitely been a fun, wild ride this year. I think you got it in the comments from Steve and myself. It's been crazy, to say the least. But we've gotten through it, and the future is just amazing ahead as long as we all continue in faith and love like we have been moving forward for the last 8+ years. So it's a great time for Unity on the Bay. It's a great time for each and every one of us. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being part of Unity on the Bay. And now we need to close in prayer, and for that I will ask Reverend Juan to do the honors. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie, and thank you to all of you for being here. I've been lately thinking about how closing prayers, for me, are really just a remembrance that everything that we've done in these meetings, in our connection, has itself been a prayer. And if you think about this meeting, we have celebrated the people who make up this community. What a beautiful prayer, walking prayer, each of those individuals, all of you included, are. We've celebrated the finances, the trust and faith that we have in our practice, right, of knowing the abundance and prosperity of God. That itself is a prayer. And we've celebrated our relationships. And as you know, I believe that that's where God is in our connection with each other. So this is really just very simple for me to invite us to be aware that in this very moment, what we are doing is we are recognizing that the ways in which we have shown up this year for Unity on the Bay, for each other, for Spirit, with an open heart, with an open mind, and being willing to trust and have faith in the amazing individuals who continue to not only support, but lead our spiritual community, our board, our senior minister, our staff, our volunteer leaders, our sacred servers, every single individual who has expressed love and commitment to our way of being, to the principles, and to the organization, the community, the relationship that is Unity on the Bay. We give thanks for that. And we give thanks that in this moment we can be so aware of the many ways in which this community and all of us included in it have been blessed and have been a great blessing. So it is. We give thanks. Amen. Thank you, everyone, for being here. What a great year we have to live into together in faith.
Congratulations.